When George Hamilton went out with Linda Bird Johnson, she was the daughter of President Lyndon B. Johnson. The White House didn't just say no way. The president actually told the FBI to check out everything about George's private life. Overnight, this young actor who used to walk on fancy red carpets got pulled into a scary world of real power. There were secret files, investigations, lots of rumors, and people watching him super closely all the time. It felt really heavy and hard to breathe. This wasn't just some fun Hollywood romance anymore. It was the moment when being famous could suddenly turn into a big trap, all because of one phone call from the strongest place in America. But George Hamilton was the type of guy who got even better at surviving when people tried to corner him. He became famous really fast and even won a Golden Globe Award for his very first big movie role. Everyone said he was this amazing new star of his time, and Hollywood treated him like the perfect dreamy guy for girls. Then they locked him into that same image right away. He had to stay the charming playboy forever, always looking perfect in those shiny suits. On the outside, he had that bright smile and his famous golden tan skin. But inside, he spent years fighting hard to take back control of his own life and choices. He had surprise comebacks in funny movies, scary close calls mixing money and bad scandals, and many times when he almost got kicked out of Hollywood completely. George Hamilton's story is about a guy who really had talent, but he paid a super tough price just to not get completely eaten up by all the bright lights shining on him. That creepy feeling of being watched like he was dangerous, like he was turned into a target for investigators just because he got close to powerful people, didn't start when he was grown up. It felt almost like a grown-up version of stuff he went through as a little kid. His childhood was always getting shaken up. Everything could flip upside down after one big shock, and he had to learn fast how to change and fit in so he wouldn't get swallowed up. George Hamilton was born on August 12, 1939, in Memphis, Tennessee. His dad, George William Spike Hamilton, was a music conductor and bandleader who traveled a lot with his orchestra. His mom, Annie Lucille Stevens, was from the South. She was smart, calm, classy, and really good at being around fancy people. Because of them, George's early kid years had this cool, almost Hollywood-style glamour. Staying in nice hotels, always traveling, hearing grown-up talk, party lights everywhere, and feeling like the world was all pretty and shiny. But that pretty outside was really thin and easy to break. In 1944, his parents' marriage fell apart because his dad had an affair with a singer from the band. George was only about 5 years old then. That big split sent their life crashing down, from traveling with music and sparkle to a hard time where his mom had to take care of 3 little boys all by herself and find a way to keep going. They moved to Blytheville, Arkansas, and lived with his mom's parents. For a short time, George felt like the world finally stopped moving. He felt warm and safe. He got really close to his grandparents and learned those sweet Southern ways, being polite, gentle, knowing exactly when to smile. Those little habits ended up helping him survive later on those red carpets. Then in 1947, both grandparents died one right after the other. The last safe place was gone, and his mom was left alone with all the heavy responsibility for 3 kids. Right then, she made a wild choice, one that would feel important for years after, like a big turning point. She flipped a coin to pick between New York or Hollywood. The coin said Hollywood, so the whole family packed up and moved to California right away, like they were betting every single hope they had on that one direction. After that, George's life became super unstable for a long time. His mom got married a few more times, so they kept moving from city to city: Beverly Hills, Boston, New York, Palm Beach. Every move meant the kid had to start everything over again. New school, new friends, new rules to learn. George went to private schools, boarding schools, and even a military-style place. All that constant changing forced him to get really good at one special skill early, watching people super carefully so he could fit in right away, using calm and charm like a shield to protect himself. Years later, when he was stuck in Hollywood's tricky spots, people always noticed how he looked so perfect, polite, steady, and almost never freaked out. That wasn't just luck. It came straight from a childhood where he had to keep standing strong in total mess over and over. All those years of jumping from one home to another, one school to the next, and always feeling like nowhere was really home gave George a S. Appreciable habit. If you want to make it through, you have to build a version of yourself that people want to look at and keep around. He didn't get into movies because of fancy acting school or a safe, famous family. He jumped into the business using the only thing he'd been practicing his whole teenage life. The power to stand tall, stay cool, and make everyone believe he totally belonged there, even though deep down, the hurts from a shaky childhood were still all there inside him. In 1957, George came back to Hollywood with one super clear and kind of crazy goal: to be an actor. Back then, Hollywood was full of good-looking young guys, and a lot of them got crushed because there just weren't enough parts for everyone. George got the rules way better than he looked like he would. To get picked, you had to make yourself impossible to ignore first. He took tiny little roles, showed up on TV shows, and waited with the kind of patience only someone really desperate for a chance can have. He was hungry not just for money, but for people to notice him and say he's good. Every single time he stood in front of a camera, he asked himself the same thing. Would people just see him as a cute, harmless guy, or could he show he was a real actor who could do so much more? In 1958, he started getting his first real steps on TV, especially in a show called In the Veil. It was a weird, troubled series that almost didn't make it because of so many problems during filming, but later on, movie fans loved it in a strange way, like a hidden treasure people want more because it got lost. For George, it didn't matter if the show was super loud or quiet. What mattered was that for the first time, he got to step into stories that felt heavier, more mysterious, sharper, and darker than his own shiny, perfect look. It was like a tiny door opening just a crack. If he could find the right way to move through it, maybe he could actually get away from being trapped by how handsome he was. That door really flew open in 1959 with a movie called Crime and Punishment USA. George played Robert Cole, a law student who kills someone and then falls apart with guilt, shaking between listening to his own conscience and the police closing in on him. This wasn't one of those parts where you're just there to look good so people stare. The role made him do something way harder. Let everyone see the broken parts inside and feel the real fear a person can have. The sad funny thing was, right when he finally showed that deep side, Hollywood started seeing him in a brand new way. People started comparing him to Anthony Perkins, and that comparison followed him like a shadow. Looking a little like him helped George get noticed, but it also made the movie bosses see him as just a copy of someone else. They loved putting people in neat little boxes. George got stuck in a tough spot. Should he use the comparison to get more jobs or fight it so people would see the real him? That's a mind battle every young actor has to deal with when they enter the big studio world. But not everyone sees it clearly enough to fight smart. That movie gave him the huge breakthrough most actors dream about forever and never get. He won the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year, actor in 1960 for his 1959 work, and he even got nominated for a BAFTA Award for Best Foreign Actor. It felt like winning a magic golden ticket. But in Hollywood, every golden ticket has a dark side too. It opens doors, but it also sticks a label right on you that won't come off. From then on, George wasn't just a young guy looking for parts anymore. He became the promising new star, a product people had big hopes for. And when people have big hopes for you, it always brings fear. Fear of messing up, fear of someone else taking your spot, fear that one bad movie would make all the nice words sound silly. That's the hard-mind cost of getting famous too young. You haven't even grown up all the way, but you already have to act like nothing can hurt you. In 1960, a movie called Home from the Hill came like an even bigger test, directed by Vincent Minnelli. The film wouldn't let George just get by on his good looks or nice way of standing. It made him live inside a story full of broken family stuff, heavy expectations, and really tight dad-son fights, a place where just being handsome could actually get you in big trouble. This kind of role needed him to hold back a lot, acting with quiet moments, little pauses, and the feeling of being stuck between wanting love and being scared you'd never be good enough. If Crime and Punishment USA gave George the key to getting famous, Home from the Hill showed he could really carry a serious, heavy story. As people started seeing him in a different light, George learned a colder fact. The path forward wasn't just going up forever. It would be a long battle to earn the right teeth. Lo pick his own parts instead of just being picked for his face. Winning big too soon often feels like a big good job, with a secret warning hidden inside. When George walked away from Home from the Hill, he wasn't just a promising new guy anymore. He became a face that Hollywood wanted to control and own. And when Hollywood decides they want to own someone, they always start the same way. They don't ask what the person dreams of becoming. They just decide it for them. In 1960, the movie, Where the Boys Are blew up like a huge turning point for regular people. George wasn't just noticed, he got launched as a big symbol. His character Ryder Smith was exactly what America wanted at the start of the 1960s. Handsome, super polite, a little bit hard to reach, with that special feeling like he came from a fancy world but still dreamy enough to make young girls fall in love. The movie wasn't just popular. It started a whole new thing in real life. College kids rushing to Florida for spring break slowly turned into a normal tradition, then a crazy trend, and later something everyone pointed to as a big moment for that whole generation. One little scene people never forgot felt super light and fun, but it worked like George's special mark as a star. He drew a question mark in the sand, a cute, playful moment in the movie that the newspapers, fans, and everyone grabbed onto, and it stuck his character's name in everyone's head. George figured it out fast. In Hollywood, sometimes you don't even need words to become a legend. You just need one perfect picture or moment. But that same big win started building his golden cage. George turned into the heartthrob guy, the perfect polite man every woman wanted and every guy secretly compared himself to. The movie studios loved that picture of him because it was so easy to sell tickets with. The trouble is, stuff that sells easy usually comes from a cookie-cutter pattern. The same look, same kind of part, same quiet promise. Just stay good-looking, stay nice, stay safe. Don't do anything that might make people feel weird. That's when his job started feeling like he couldn't breathe. The brighter the lights got, the smaller the space for different kinds of roles became. George fought back by doing something tougher, proving he was way more than just a pretty picture that could talk and walk. In 1962, Light in the Piazza came as another serious test. His character Fabrizio was kind, patient, and quietly classy, a guy who loved with real honesty, not just Playboy tricks. The movie didn't make tons of money, but it gave George something way more important than cash. People finally saw that he could really act, hold onto deep feelings in a story, and stay strong in a complicated movie without his looks taking over everything. But even that wasn't enough yet to rip off the charming Playboy sticker Hollywood glued on him. The people still called him that. New scripts kept coming in the same old style. The harder he tried to break free, the more it felt like he was pushing on a door someone locked from the other side. By the middle and late 1960s, what really stung George wasn't people hating him. It was people loving him in a lazy, easy way. The fans loved his perfect image. The studios loved how much money that image could make. Only George started hating how it felt to be stuck wearing the same shiny suit for so long that he wasn't even sure what was real underneath anymore. From there, a slow, burning wish grew inside him. If the movie world kept trying to force him into the handsome and charming box, he would figure out how to change that box himself, not just with acting parts but with smart plans. The big change started quietly, but in a risky way in the early 1970s. George did something most young big stars never tried. He took control for real. In 1971, he got into producing a movie called Evel Knievel about the famous daredevil stunt guy. This wasn't a film where he could just flash his smile or act all gentlemanly. This was a choice from someone who was tired of sitting by the phone waiting for someone to call. He stepped way deeper into how Hollywood really works, the place where the money starts, where the real power hides, who gets to say yes or no to a movie living or dying. Once you learn those rules, you're not just an actor begging at the front door anymore. You learn how to sneak around the back when the main way is blocked. So the early to mid-1970s felt like a super tight, high-pressure time for him. The fame was still around, but the fun part had dried up. His good looks still helped, but they also made people doubt if he had real talent. He had to keep up the perfect image so he wouldn't get thrown away, while also hunting for a way out so he wouldn't sink inside that same image forever. That push and pull built a special kind of toughness in George Hamilton, SM. Art planned out toughness made exactly for the moment when everything turns. And that moment lit up in 1979 with Love at First Bite. It was like hitting the reset button on his whole career, a comeback he planned on purpose. George picked Dracula, but not the old scary castle kind. He made Dracula into a funny disco-time rich guy, super classy, just silly enough, making fun of himself in the perfect amount, totally knowing people were watching him and turning that watching into big laughs. The smartest trick was this. The thing people always teased him about, his super dark tan, became the funny weapon. Dracula with a tan, that crazy mix made everyone crack up first, and then they realized George wasn't just acting a part. He was putting his whole real life on the screen, a brave guy using the image that trapped him to smash the trap open. And wow, it made a ton of money. About $43.9 million at the box office from only around $3 million to make it. That huge win made Hollywood pay attention fast. The success wasn't just cash. It was a loud message straight to the movie bosses. George Hamilton wasn't some washed-up cute guy begging to matter again. He was someone smart enough to remake himself into a hot new thing exactly when the timing was perfect. That movie also got him a Golden Globe nomination in the musical comedy category, like official proof he could make people laugh hard. And if you can make crowds laugh, you can keep going strong. In 1981, he took an even bigger risk with Zorro, the gay Blade. George didn't play just one Zorro, he played two. the regular Don Diego and his super flashy twin brother Bunny. That kind of choice could easily make people mad, call it too wild, or laugh at him in a mean way. But George went right for the weak spot and flipped it into power. I'm not scared to be the joke because I'm the one in charge of it. The movie split people. Some loved how brave it was, others said it went too far. But in his job, it was a strong statement. He was ready to break that old mold all the way, ready to take his old perfect gentleman look and twist it, play with it, laugh right in the face of the shiny cage that kept him stuck for 10 years. Even better, that acting got him another Golden Globe nomination, locking in his new spot. George Hamilton wasn't just a face stuck in typecasting anymore. He was a guy who could flip the whole game with brains, knowing himself, and a scary strong will to survive. After that, his career went into a whole new chapter. Because once you show you can make people laugh and bring in big box office money, Hollywood can't just call you handsome decoration anymore. George Hamilton broke out of the typecasting trap with a move that was soft, but also super tough. He turned the bad opinions people had about him into the exact thing that won for him. George Hamilton's funny movie comeback might have fixed his worth in Hollywood, but his huge fame actually started way earlier. Not from any movie part, but from a love story that had all of America talking and staying up late. George Hamilton and Linda Bird Johnson, daughter of President Lyndon B. Johnson. It was the kind of dating where just showing up together in public could end up as huge news on the front page. Because between them wasn't only filings, there was the White House right there too. They met through the fancy mix of power and showbiz people in Washington, in rooms where parties weren't just fun drinks and songs, but also full of eyes watching and judging you. Linda wasn't some Hollywood party girl. She had that quiet, careful way, like someone taught to hold feelings in, talk just enough, smile just enough. And that careful side actually pulled George in hard, because he lived in a world of bright lights and fake shine, but always wanted something that felt true and real. Things moved really fast, and soon they were this shocking pair. A movie star walking next to the president's daughter like it was no big deal. Newspapers and cameras followed them everywhere. They went to big events together, Oscars, fancy parties, high society trips, all wrapped in that special feeling of being close to political power. When George visited the LBJ Ranch for Easter, it wasn't just meeting the family. It felt like a nerve-wracking test. To regular people, it looked like a sweet romance from a book. To President Johnson, it looked dangerous, like a risk to safety, family name, and respect. What made it feel so tight and hard was that Johnson didn't just say he didn't like it. He called the FBI for real. Not a nice little background check, a full-on investigation. Who were George's friends? What did he do in private? Was there anything bad they could use against him? Anything for leverage, even rumors that could wreck a career super fast? George got pushed into a crazy and mean spot, the charming guy who used to be Chase. Dee now had to prove he wasn't just using Linda to get ahead. Love turned into walking a tightrope where one wrong step could drop you into nothing. One story people tell over and over as a tough guy moment. A hunting trip at the Texas ranch when Johnson handed George a gun. It wasn't a friendly family thing. It felt like a silent warning, here I make the rules. George got it right away, he was always great at feeling the room. He took the gun, stayed calm, acted strong and cool enough so nothing blew up at that powerful table. Even after passing that test, the relationship still got squeezed tighter every day by secret watching. They never got married, not because they didn't care, but because too many powerful hands were all over that love. By late 1966, they broke up. The weird part is George didn't leave that world angry or bitter. In 1967, when Linda married Charles Robb, George even went to the wedding smiling, taking pictures, acting like a total gentleman. Seeing that gives you chills. The love was over, but the guy stood there like he felt no pain, like someone who got way too good at hiding hurt deep inside. That whole chapter with Linda Bird Johnson taught George a hard, cold lesson. When your fame gets close to real power, love can turn into just another secret file. He got out of the White House mess without the newspapers tearing him to pieces. He kept the gentleman act. He kept smiling for the cameras. But that same skill at surviving quietly tricked him into thinking something dangerous. If he stayed polished enough, smart enough, proper enough, he could walk through any powerful place and not get hurt. Then 1979 came along. Love at First Bite blew up and brought him back to where people had to invite him to the big important tables again. Right at that same time, another door opened, not a Hollywood red carpet one, but in Manila. George went to the Philippines to help promote his movie. One lunch invite took him to the presidential palace to meet Imelda Marcos, the first lady famous for being glamorous, loving art, and collecting fancy things everyone noticed. To Imelda, George wasn't just some actor. He was like living jewelry, elegant from the West, famous, the perfect fancy thing to put next to power. To George, that lunch looked like a golden chance. Getting lifted up by someone right in the middle of big Asian power, treated like a special guest. Getting into a world even Hollywood people had to respect. That friendly feeling pulled in some certain people around him fast. People who stayed out of the lights but decided where big money went. Antonio Fluarndo, a rich businessman tied to powerful groups in the Philippines. Glyceria Tantoco, a woman seen as super close to Imelda, part of connections that later got called scary real names like a network by courts and reporters. On top, it all looked like pure fun glamour. Parties, movie events, trips sold as sharing culture. Underneath was the part that turned George's life darker. Money started flowing through his bank accounts. A $600,000 loan from Antonio Fluarndo got talked about a lot. It sounds small on paper, but it was enough to start big suspicions. George explained it like a gentleman would. Just a loan to handle business stuff, invest, keep things steady. The trouble was the timing, and who was involved made every excuse sound weak. When a Hollywood star gets close to the Marcos family and takes money from a businessman in their circle, people stop seeing it as a normal borrow. They see it as sneaky power trying to clean dirty money through a clean-looking famous face. Starting in 1982, the suspicious stories got bigger. The money didn't sound like a simple loan anymore. There were steps in the investigation that felt really chilling. People said millions went through George's accounts. The biggest scary detail was a bank in Hong Kong, supposedly a middle stop that made the whole thing smell like washing illegal money. One number hurt the most: $5.5 million in moves, transfers, taking cash out. Enough to make everyone ask, what real good reason would even a famous actor have to move that much money around, especially when the Marcos family was getting accused of stealing tons from their country's money? And once money looks shady, everything near it starts looking bad too. House fixes, changing what he owned, new investments, all of it suddenly got looked at under a magnifying glass. There was even talk about a movie idea connected to Douglas MacArthur. A plan that got twisted, a script changed, money disappearing into fog. Under the idea of making a film, people started hearing something else: money getting made to look legal through a story about art. George Hamilton landed in a really poisonous spot. He wasn't a politician, so he couldn't just shrug and say everybody does dirty stuff. He wasn't a super rich Busey. Ness guy, so people couldn't say his cash came from lots of normal ways. He was an actor, the symbol of perfect class and grace, someone the public really wanted to believe was clean and good. That's exactly why even one tiny bad mark could tear his whole image apart. By the late 1980s, his name started showing up in official files the way no star wants, listed as a possible co-conspirator. Sometimes he was on lists of people working together in bad things. Other times they said he wasn't charged or tried, but still pulled into the story as a possible connection. The worst part wasn't jail. The worst was the label suspected. Put next to Marcos, next to big numbers and Hong Kong banks, turned into the famous guy whose nice image helped move money around. One solid fact made it impossible to say it was just silly talk. The Los Angeles Times, a big serious newspaper, wrote about 1990 court testimony that mentioned Hamilton getting that $600,000 loan from Antonio Fluardo, plus fights over papers, files, and lawsuits. When a newspaper that important puts your name in the Marcos money story, it's enough to make the "I'm totally innocent" feeling he worked so hard for freeze up. George kept saying he did nothing wrong, kept saying it was only friendship and normal social stuff. That sounds okay until you remember, power never hands out money just to be nice friends. Well, the cash went through his accounts. His fame gave it a gentle looks okay stamp. And from then on, the perfect Hollywood gentleman look always had a little scratch that no amount of polishing could totally fix. The scratch from a star who once thought he could step into the powerful world and not get dragged down. The Marcos mess didn't take away George's polite ways, but it forced him to see a hard truth. Hollywood can forgive scandals if you know how to flip them into something good for you. When his gentleman image got pulled into the gray, shady money area, George didn't cry about it or give big moral speeches defending himself. He did something way more smart and tough. He turned himself into a brand people could buy, so his fame wouldn't break easy anymore and wouldn't depend only on movies. He took the one thing everyone remembered most, the tan people made fun of for years. George didn't fight the jokes. He hugged them tight and squeezed them into money. Who else can take what people laugh at and turn it into a whole money-making machine? By the late 1980s, the tan stopped being just a joke in newspapers. It became a full business world. The George Hamilton skin care line, sun care line. A whole set of products sold as the secret trick of the Golden Tan Perfect Gentleman. Scrubs to clean your skin, face masks, overnight gels that promised you'd wake up looking fresh and healthy. At first, he sold them by mail, hitting regular Americans right in the "I want to buy a piece of a star's shine" feeling. When sales got really good, the products moved into big stores, real shelves, real counters, feeling legit. One story even says he made over $4 million in the first year. Nobody had to actually love George. As long as they wanted what he stood for, that fresh from vacation glow, they'd still open their wallets. Well, the next big risk came after. Once the products were selling, George opened tanning salons. Right when everyone started getting scared about skin cancer and staying out of the sun, doctors warning, newspapers full of danger stories, George went the other way. He didn't drop the tan look to play it safe. He grew it bigger into a real business, selling fake sun, selling the quick way to get the look the world connected to his name for years. This was the perfect example of his whole career's contradiction. He made money from the image, but that same image started hitting back hard. The tanning salons got lots of complaints. They led to lawsuits and having to pay to settle them. The meanest part was how it came full circle on his own body. After years of treating his skin like a king, George had to get surgeries, cutting away bad spots. A guy who built a whole empire on his tan ended up paying a price with the very skin that made him big. By 1997, he switched again, picking a new flashy way to keep his shine going. Hamilton's Cigar Lounge at the New York Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. George didn't just open a place. He built himself another stage. The lounge had private rooms made to look like old train cars, including one called the Club Car. The cigar list had 15 special mixes with the Hamilton name, some even named like his movie characters, like King George or Zorro. He sold cigars the same way he always sold himself, not just the thing, but the whole fancy lifestyle around it. For a while, it became the spot for that old-school Vegas luxury crowd. When the cigar bar trend slowed down and more competition came, the lounge closed and George walked away clean, like an actor stepping off stage before anyone sees the cracks in the makeup. George Hamilton could turn almost anything in his life into a show, from his tan to his whole way of living. But when he met Alana Stewart, things suddenly felt real and not planned at all. Alana came in right when people were labeling him as the forever playboy. Handsome, famous, always in lights and gossip. So everyone thought this relationship would just be another show that ended in drama. But Alana didn't come as some pretty extra in his life. She came as a strong woman who could see past the shiny surface, touch the real guy under the smile, the part even Hollywood people only guessed at but never really got close to. They met and clicked super fast and strong, like two people who'd spent too long in a world of fake stares and wanted something true. George was trained to hide everything behind his smile, to use being polite as a way out whenever stuff got hard. Alana had a different gentle side, the kind of woman who knew show business but wouldn't let it eat her up. Their marriage happened in pure George style, quick like a movie scene, almost wild, in 1972 in Las Vegas. No long planning, no perfect PR wedding pictures. Standing there as witness that day was Colonel Tom Parker, the guy who managed Elvis Presley. And either right before or right after signing the papers, George still went into the casino and lost a pretty big amount at roulette. He married because of feelings and lost money because that's just how he rolled. Romantic and risky at the same time, totally fitting a guy who lived like everything was a performance. Being married to Alana wasn't some calm, happy place. It was the real messy life of two young people stuck in the middle of a storm. Crazy schedules, invites everywhere, parties, lists of powerful friends, traveling all the time, attention that never turned off. George was the kind of guy who shined bright when he felt loved, but went quiet when he felt like he was losing something. He was used to making jokes out of everything, even the painful stuff. Alana couldn't stay forever as the woman just standing behind her husband's perfect smile. She wanted real family, a feeling of home, a husband who was there more than he was on fancy carpets. They didn't need big fights. The problems grew from quiet tiredness, one always looking out at the world, the other needing to look inside and be close. In 1974, their son Ashley Hamilton was born. That moment made George face something hard for the first time, a truth tough for any spotlight addict to swallow. Being a dad isn't the same as acting like a dad in a movie. He really loved his kid. But being a star made just being there feel like a special treat instead of normal. There were times George still had to leave for work, rush from movie sets back to family, feeling torn between doing his job and chasing lights and being home like he should. That's a hard fight no acting class ever teaches you. Alana saw it clearer than anyone because she was the one staying with the baby, staying in the house after the cameras turned off. They got divorced in 1976. It happened so fast that everyone thought it was just another fake Hollywood marriage for the headlines. The real story was way more complicated. They stopped being husband and wife, but they never stopped being connected. The strange thing was, what kept them together wasn't duty or being scared to be alone. It was something harder to explain. They understood each other too deeply to turn into enemies. Most people think divorce means war. George and Alana turned it into something different, lighter, more practical with less big expectations, but somehow stronger and longer lasting. Ashley grew up with two parents who weren't married anymore but still acted like a team. George kept showing up as a dad who could make up for not always being there by being really there when it counted, catching his son with jokes when things got rough. Ashley later went into show business too, dealing with both the good stuff and the heavy pressure of having a famous dad. And when Ashley hit some unstable, really dark times, George and Alana showed who they really were. Not perfect, quiet about it, but refusing to let their son face the darkness by himself. As years went by, that connection didn't fade. It changed into something nobody saw coming. By the mid-1990s, they even started showing up together, hosting together. Like all of Hollywood had to blink and stare because two people divorced for years could still laugh and hang out so naturally. It wasn't romance anymore. It was the kind of bond that only happens when two people have seen each other's worst sides and still can't bring themselves to throw it away. They shared meals, talked on the phone a lot, and Alana became the one who gently pulled George beat. Act down to earth when he got too lost in ego, fancy stuff, or acting dreams. All of it built a family that looked unusual but felt solid. The big difference is this: lots of stars disappear after a divorce like their time is up. But George Hamilton didn't. He understood one tough rule about show business. People might forget your movies, but they never forget a face, if that face knows how to show up again in the perfect spot at the perfect time. And when movies weren't the only way to shine anymore, he switched to regular TV, the big screen that keeps famous people alive with closeness, curiosity, and quick fun. In 2006, George joined season 2 of Dancing with the Stars. At an age when a lot of actors would just relax, he didn't jump in to win with perfect dance moves or super hunger. He went in with what he was best at: nerves of steel on stage. Viewers watched this classy, old Hollywood guy step onto the dance floor without being scared of looking silly or old. The dance everyone remembers most was the one inspired by Zorro, mask on, sword ready, full of humor and pride, like he was telling everyone, an image only has power when you're brave enough to play around with it. He became a big favorite with fans, lasted until week 6, then left. But what he got back was way bigger than any trophy. He earned the right to show up in public in a fresh way, lighter, closer to people, more fun. 3 years later in 2009, he picked an even wilder stage: "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here," in the UK. A super polished guy used to suits and bright lights walked into the Australian jungle. No makeup, no pretty sets, just hard challenges and having to keep going. George didn't try to act like the best. He showed he could change and handle anything. He went in knowing how TV really works. People don't need perfect, they need personality. And he left the show in classic George style. No drama, no big fuss, just quietly stepping out like he was saying, I came for the adventure, not to beg for more attention. By 2015, Stewart's and Hamilton's brought him and Alana back on screen in a show that let everyone see their real family life up close. The daily stuff, the weird closeness even after divorce, the half-joking, half-real talks between two people who once loved each other so much they couldn't become strangers. Here, George wasn't acting as Dracula or Zorro. He was just himself, an older, classy guy, still quick and funny, able to make any moment softer with his quiet charm. Reality TV wasn't just another show for him. It was his way of bringing that old gentleman image into today's world. So younger people could see George Hamilton wasn't some old name stuck in the past on videotapes. In the same way, in 2016, he did a small cameo on the sitcom Two Broke Girls. A tiny part but super smart. George knew you don't need a huge role. You just need the right show, the right crowd, the right moment, and your name lights up again like, oh yeah, him. Every little appearance was a smart way to slip his brand back into pop culture without asking Hollywood's permission. And once TV built that bridge to new generations, George hit his biggest win, not in a movie but in commercials. In 2016, KFC started their fun campaign switching up actors to play Colonel Sanders. Lots of actors would say that kind of job was below them. George saw it as a perfect chance. Commercials can bring a star back to life in just seconds, if you're smart enough to turn yourself into the right joke at the right time. He played the extra crispy Colonel with zero shame, white suit, that famous tan turned into a funny point on purpose, making his own look into comedy. The smart part was, he didn't do it just to get remembered. He sold himself as total entertainment, able to laugh at the sun damage people always teased him about, turning internet jokes into real money and laughs into more fans. In 2018, he came back for another round, like proof it wasn't a one-time thing. George Hamilton did what so many stars are scared of. He stepped into the online and internet world without getting lost in it. Instead, he updated himself into a newer version. Still the gentleman, still that smile, still the famous tan. But now he used the exact things people used to make fun of to take charge of the story. Through his whole career, George Hamilton wasn't just another good-looking Hollywood face. He became something way more special, a brand, a man who knew how to turn how people saw him into real power. He started in movies with a bang, winning Golden Globe for New Star of the Year, actor, and getting a BAFTA nomination. Then he left his mark on regular culture with parts that were sexy but also smart about themselves, especially the big hit Love at First Bite, which got him another Golden Globe nod and made him the forever disco Dracula everyone remembers. When Hollywood switched things up, he didn't get left in the dust. Big TV, reality shows, little guest spots on sitcoms, even KFC ads, everything turned into a new stage where he could show up fresh. A whole new group of people could spot him and know who he was in just seconds. George Hamilton used all the glamour to hide the tough rules of the business. But seeing those rules so clearly is exactly what let him keep going. A guy who got stuck in one type of role, got hit with suspicions and rumors, but never let himself fade away like some forgotten star. He didn't win by having everyone love him all the time. He won with a rare trick, the skill to turn every new time period into his own stage. What impresses you most about George Hamilton? His crazy ability to stay a brand, his super smart changes in career, or how he made himself into someone you just can't replace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep digging into these lives that look all shiny and perfect on top, But when you look closer, you find all these cracks nobody ever talks about.